For that is how its creatures requested it in the kingdom of heavens. And the struggle of philosophies was given to them, according to the commandments. The humblest philosophy remains reigning on earth. It was written that the humble are first. This is in every order of things, which includes matter and spirit. To be the first ones before the Divine Father is to be one up above as well as down below. The mandates of the Creator not only include one world, but infinite worlds, whose numbers are like the grains of sand contained in a desert. Among all the philosophies that men requested to trial, the Creator chooses the most long-suffering, the most despised by the human selfishness, the one that has cost more sweat, blood, and tears, the one that has got more spiritual merit. Verily the science of exploitation does not have such virtues. It is an easy attitude philosophy to the degree of being immoral. If your Creator did not send you the doctrine of the Lamb of God, be sure that your world would have ended up being a slave, just as it has happened and still happens on infinite planets Earths. Your Creator sends you this new doctrine, because you requested it yourselves in the kingdom of heavens. This doctrine includes the final judgment, for after the trial comes a judgment, a verdict comes. The world shall be shuddered in its nature and in its spirit. For centuries and centuries my free will expressed in scriptures has been announcing you the final judgment. The Divine Father reserved for himself the right of how the final judgment would be, for he has a divine free will, just as you do. What is up above is the same as down below. What is of the Father is infinite and what is yours is microscopic. But you have come out of the same creative law. All of you human creatures talked to Father Jehovah before coming to the human life. You were given preference for every very little, microscopic and humble is great in the kingdom of heavens, which means that every humble, poor and exploited is the one that should have and should be governing the earth's destinies. If it was not so, be sure that every guilty demon shall be judged, up above as well as down below, those who departed from life as well as those who are in it. The human attitude through the centuries has been in general an attitude of indifference before my scriptures, and they promised in the kingdom not to fall into indifferences concerning my laws. That is why as soon as you arrived into the human life, the supreme mandate, "Thou shalt adore your Lord and Creator above everything," was awaiting you. By saying above everything also means above every indifference, for it is enough 1 second or less of indifference towards your Creator of your lives, and you shall not enter the kingdom of heavens. You yourselves requested it so in your alliances with the 318 living virtues, which your thinking is composed of. Every philosophy is a living thinking, and every living philosophy, every thinking with its philosophy, is an eternal knowledge. It is the salt of your future life. Your future physical body comes out of it. According to your feelings and your deeds, so shall your physical cover be. Once a life is left, a new thinking is born in the spirit. The experience that he got to know on the chosen planet determines new covenants with new virtues. No spirit escapes from this influence, for every trip to the infinite brings along nuances. Every spirit is a traveler, for he requests to be born again in infinite worlds. The worlds are like the spirit's own perfection. Its number is like the number of sands that a desert contains. The philosophies you had to live on your earth are also like the sands of a desert, and the more one is born and think, the more the worlds and the philosophies are increased, to such a degree that nobody in the universe can calculate them, only the Father knows. For everything comes out and returns to the Father. One returns without having fulfilled what was promised in the kingdom of heavens. Every mandate reverberates in every conscience. It is so because you requested it in the kingdom, and it was conceded to you. And every philosophy has got a living hierarchy, and so it is that the capitalist philosophy is, due to its hierarchy, very far from the living morality of the commandments. That is why this philosophy proper of darkness disappears from the world. It was trialed along with others, and every trial has an ending. The greatest error of the authors of capitalism is to have enclosed themselves in only one present, to have struggled blindly without coming out of their present. The true spirituality covers infinite presence, and does not enclose itself in anyone, nor will it ever do it. Gold was the ruin of the creators of capitalism, for no rich enters the kingdom of heavens. It was for these backward spirits that was written, "It is more likely for a camel to pass through a needle's eye than a rich to enter the kingdom of heavens," a divine warning to every greedy, exploiter, deceiver, speculator, trader being. The scriptures have many examples of warning for the gold traffickers. If they did not know how to take advantage of them, it is their own fault. Nobody taught them to be usurers and ambitious. That is an imperfection of their own spirits. These slavers of world's life systems were warned, "Where you sin, you pay." They were told, "So in the kingdom of heavens, these creatures shall be cursed by the own world." For they built the world's hopes up more with their merchandises, to such a degree that this world does not enter the kingdom of heavens, for it is just enough 1 second or less of violation, and one does not enter the kingdom. Capitalism and its gold are the creators of the science of good. Every comfort given by them shall bring tears to the world, for it is a comfort that came out of the violation of the commandments. The divine commandments do not mandate anyone to become rich, they mandate to be humble above everything else. Every enjoyment of every violation gets transmitted, just as the first terrestrial parents Adam and Eve transmitted the complex of guilt to the world. This revelation clears the great mystery of the beginning of the fall of the world, a beginning whose cause became an oblivion in the human philosophy. For the human spirits requested it so, they requested it as a trial. For every spirit is trialed in life. There are lives that are not trials from the philosophical point of view. Other laws are fulfilled there. For there is everything in the Father's flock. The earth shall enter the millennium of peace very soon, a peace that is born from the humble, from the exploited ones. Capitalism never thought to give the world an eternal and sincere peace. It was not able to, nor shall it ever be, for it served two masters, it served two philosophies, by which it is impossible to attain eternity, for it got divided by itself. The exploited know by experience that they will eternally be in a level of inferiority. This sensation cannot be eliminated by capitalism. And from there comes its fall. It shall fall as a false Christ falls. Its name shall be a synonym of shame and aberration for the future generations. All the children of the future shall talk about capitalism, as one talks about the demon, for there is no bigger demon than the own exploitation of its own brothers of life. Satan shall be replaced by capitalism, the demon that subjugated the world Alpha, or the beginning of the world. The millennium of peace initiates the Omega period, or the end of a philosophy of trials. The communist philosophy that was never studied by the backward spirits of capitalism shall be the queen of the world, for she shall be the one that will bring justice among the sexes. It is initiated in this philosophy, the women's reign. The world shall be governed by them. It should have never occurred the opposite, for men and women are equal before God. Man was born with a complex of superiority, which has had a great influence in his false history. The history of humanity is false from the same instant in which its creatures violated the commandments. What you call history shall pass to the dust of oblivion, for a new philosophy and a new morality comes to the world. It was written, "The earth shall pass, but my words shall not pass." This parable, that has centuries and centuries, is about to come true. It is the earth and the materialistic exploitative laws, which shall pass. The truth is eternal. It never gets modified. The earth's false history is a product of spirits who requested relative philosophies. It is a product of a trial of life. All the imperfections of humanity are reflected in their history. It is more likely for a creature who has got no history to enter the kingdom of heavens than a creature who lived in a false history. To live a false history has nothing of humility. It is like living in false customs. Each form of living that you have had on earth is weighed and judged in heaven. The most perfect form of living is the one that takes into account, above all things, the morality of the commandments. There is no other better one, for without it you shall never enter the kingdom of heavens. You should have followed it in the course of your lives, second by second, for it is just enough 1 second or less of forgetting it, and you shall not enter the kingdom of heavens. The crying and gnashing of teeth starts for this world, a judgment that will shudder your feelings. There will be nobody who shall not feel regret, for even your forms of life scandalize the Father's morality. Your fashions that you give so much importance to shall be the ones that will stop you from entering the kingdom. Each second of scandalous fashion corresponds to 1 world less that you shall visit in the future. Calculate the seconds of immoral fashion, nakedness, vice, years of vulgar words, and you shall be terrified of the number of heavens that shall close on you, for each world has its own heaven, just as the earth does. Where you fell more sadly into was in the living illusion, a product of materialism, of the science of good, of the well-being that money gives. You promised in the kingdom of heavens not to let yourselves be influenced by any illusion, for illusion is contrary to sacrifice, to the spiritual effort, to the sweat of one's face. It deviates the human mind from the morality of my commandments. The human creature also produces illusion, but it is one's own illusion. The illusion of money as a philosophy of the daily living is another thing, for it came out of ambitious demons, who impose it on the world as a unique form of living. For these imperfect beings do not know another one, or they do not want to know it. Not being satisfied with work, they take pleasure on exploiting their fellow beings. The way of using money as an instrument of this exploitation nullifies every spiritual action in them. That is why no rich enters the kingdom of heavens, nor shall they be resurrected to children of 12 years old in the year 1. For the laws of nature shall not make any covenant with their virtues, for the laws of the universe are also living. They read the human mind without it noticing it. They read it just as the mind tries to understand the laws of the elements, for everything is living, everything thinks. All the everything above everything is a complement. Not a single molecule would exist if it did not have as a companion the one that it had to be with. The same thing happens among the spirits. All of you met each other in the kingdom of heavens. You made alliances of families, nations, and races. And everything that happens to you in life, you saw it in the kingdom. Everything, absolutely everything. That everything includes the momentary oblivion of your galactic past. You requested oblivion so that your life on earth would constitute itself into a trial. There lies the greater merit of a human life. The struggle to learn everything, the sweat of one's face to attain bread. This effort did not include exploitation, for the commandments do not teach to exploit each other. If it was so, your world would become a world of slaves. Nobody is born a slave, slavery is created by man, it is a product of the human immorality. The doctrine of communism had to bear with the exploitative philosophies, for it promised they would be overcome. Its spirits that practice it are spirits who are very advanced regarding what is spiritual. The spirits of capitalism shall defend the communist philosophy in future worlds, for sooner or later love shall prevail in the existences that the spirit will have. Love always triumphs. Sooner or later, if it is not in one existence, it is in another; if it is not in one world, it is in another. The Father's law is pre-existent to any imaginable philosophy. The worlds, after trying and trialing themselves in many philosophies, end up in being paradises. They end up in such a joyous philosophy that it can only be compared to a child's thought. That is why it was said, "Let the children come to me, for theirs is the kingdom of heavens." It means, among many teachings, that one who is not joyful like a child does not enter the kingdom. This joy should have been during all the existence. If one stopped being joyful 1 second or less, he does not enter the kingdom of heavens. Bitterness, indolence, and ill will were not requested by you, for such virtues are not from heavens. They came out of the own world, and the culprits are the guiding beings that the world had, for they did not eradicate them, they let themselves be overcome by them, which constitutes an immoral example to the world. If there are idiots and selfish beings in the world, they shall be punished, but those by whose causes idiocy and selfishness were born, shall be more punished. Indifference in the daily living is a product of the philosophy of exploitation. Nobody is indifferent in the kingdom. No indifferent being shall enter the kingdom, for they would feel indifference towards him. In the macrocosm everybody reads each other's minds, and everybody is telepathic, and they know how to distinguish the violator of the law, whichever world they may be from. This reality fills the spirits of flesh with shame, and they feel forced to leave the kingdom. There are infinite spirits of our planet who swarm around the spaces, away from the eternal happiness, and everybody coincides that the happiness that reigns in the kingdom has no comparison to any universe of the universe. Many live cursing their own world, others resign themselves, for there is everything in the universal flock of the Father. The resigned and repentant spirits are called first in the kingdom, in order to form new covenants of a future life. The hardened ones have to wait, for everything is done with love in the kingdom. The hardened spirits are known as rock spirits, because of their spiritual selfishness. The spirits of religions belong to this category. For them was it written, "Upon this rock shall I build my church." It was a warning to the attitudes of the religious spirits, who due to an excessive zeal in their missions fell into an intellectual selfishness. It is just enough 1 second or less of intellectual selfishness, and one does not enter the kingdom of heavens. The intellectual selfishness of the rock has 20 centuries already. They must calculate the seconds of time contained in the 20 centuries. Each second represents one existence that takes them apart from the kingdom of heavens. They divide themselves. For them was it written, "Only Satan divides himself."
Riten by Alpha and Omega.